Welcome, everybody, to another episode of In Touch Live, our speaker series. We're here with one of our esteemed partners and a friend, Robin Dreeke, retired FBI and former, I would say, Marines and U.S. Graduate of the Naval Academy. Welcome, Robin.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, and that FBI thing at the end. So it's too much government service for too long, no doubt.
Well, that's good, but now you're on the private side. Why don't you tell everybody who our audience who didn't have the pleasure of meeting you back in New York last August 1st in for was it City Field?
Yeah.
Why don't you tell our audience about your background a little bit, and then we'll get into what you're doing today.
Yeah, so as you said, Naval Academy graduate, Marine Corps officer, came from the Marine Corps right into the FBI in 1996 into 97. And my entire time in the FBI was working counterintelligence, worked in New York City, Norfolk, Virginia, FBI headquarters, Quantico, Virginia. In the world of counterintelligence, my primary responsibility was recruiting intelligence officers that were working on behalf of foreign countries, primarily mostly Russian spies and Chinese spies and things like that. Worked against them up in New York, and then worked at counterintelligence all across the spectrum. Became a team member on the behavioral analysis program. So, layman's terms, kind of like profiling for the counterintelligence side. Did that since 2001, and it was a collateral duty, which most profiling jobs are throughout my entire career as a primary investigator. Went from New York, as I said, to Norfolk, and then headquarters, where I ran a national program for counterintelligence for Russians. And at Quantico, I was an instructor at the Counterintelligence Training Center, and I eventually took over the behavioral analysis program as the chief of it. And so I was in charge of strategizing all the hooky, spooky spy stuff for numbers of years. And in my last couple of years, I came to the Fredericksburg office out of Richmond, just south of DC, where I worked counterintelligence there. So, and I retired in 2018. So there you go. All the hooky, spooky spy stuff is what I did.
Your books are fascinating. They're fascinating, and I know we've talked privately that you've changed some of the names to protect the innocents. But you're coming out. You came out with a new book. Folks will put this together. All of Robin's books. I believe they're on Amazon, so you can get them all over. Fascinating. How to recruit a spy, or what you did, or your history of public service, and now you're in the private service. What's the new book today? And then we can go ahead and put a link on that at the end of this chat.
Sure. So the latest book is a updated, revised edition of my very first self-published book. Was It's Not All About Me. The top 10 techniques for a quick rapport with anyone. Excuse me. And updated, because I first came out with that book in like 2010, 2011. I wrote it while I was at the FBI Counterintelligence Training Center. So some of my terminology I've advanced since then. I've got more mature. I refresh the stories. I really went a little more granular on some key takeaways, as well as the exercises I put at the end of it. But the good thing about it, it's actually, out of all my books, it's probably hands down the biggest bestseller. It's short. It's about 3.5 hour listen if you listen to it on Audible, and only about 26,000 words. And it is just a really condensed, chock full behavior book on how you form the first impressions with someone and ultimately build trust and healthy, strong alliances. Because all my work in the world of counterintelligence is anti-manipulation, anti-subterfuge, even though everyone kind of relates the world of spy recruitment and source development as that kind of thing. It's anything but that, because in order to inspire someone to do something that might be risky, might be dangerous, or any kind of area of that, is you have to have supreme trust. And trust is not built upon a foundation of lies or deception. It's actually built upon a foundation of transparency, openness, and communication. So everything I do is 100% humanistic based for understanding what makes people do what they do from a very genetic and biological level, and then a social economic level, and just that huge interpersonal factor that we all look for and crave in every human interaction.
It's fascinating. I look at human interaction. I was a speech communication major with theory, and then, a lot of what you have to say in your books and in your talks resonates with me, and not only just me personally, but business wise. We run a risk management, a full service risk management insurance firm, and then we run InTouch Live, which is business development, networking, education, and then content. And then that's why we're here today, is content. What are you doing right now with your new company, D2? I want to hear about that. And how are you using your spy techniques or recruiting spies to go ahead and help businesses grow and getting trust with the executive leadership with companies moving forward?
Yeah, so D2 is a fun thing that a good friend of mine, his name's Matthew Dunn, put together with me, and we put together last year. It's a really boutique kind of service that we did, and here's what it is. So Matthew Dunn is a former MI6 spy from Britain, and he is an amazing individual. So basically a 007 kind of guy, and
Yep.
he has years of field operations overseas, recruiting intelligence officers and spies and getting the intelligence. I have the same thing on my side, but the reverse. I'm trying to catch guys like him. And we've partnered together, and using that very humanistic approach, understanding the motivations of human beings, is we have a 3-day course that teaches anyone that, especially, we're servicing the CEOs and the high C-suite executives, how to forge the alliances they need to move forward in business. Because we did the research, and the research is on our website too, you can pull up, that every single problem and struggle that CEOs face today happens because they don't have the allies that they need. And so during the 3 days with us is we do, and it's a very exclusive group. You can only, I think our max number we'll take is 10. And it's one-on-one with us for 3 days, where we walk you through the entire spotting, assessing, developing, recruiting, and then the handling cycle that we use in the world of intelligence. And we tailor it specifically to the individual CEOs or the executives' needs. In other words, when you come in, we work with you, teach you the skills and techniques we used on the street to recruit these high-level sources that prevented, nuclear wars between countries, basically, sometimes. Right. And they identify the people that they need to have as allies in their business world. They identify the people that they might not have the greatest relationships with, that they need to develop relationships with. And so they identify the people, and then together we walk through the process of how to make those allies that they need for what they're needed to accomplish. And so at the end of 3 days, they actually come out with, I hate the word targeting package because it makes it seem too pragmatic and objective,
Yeah,
but it really is.
Now.
It's a human targeting package about how we are going to look at the individuals we need to move our needle from A to B, or as they say, move that football down the field. And they walk out with the exact process they need with all the behaviors that they come up with, just based on this framework that we used for success throughout my 22 years with the FBI, and Matthews as well with the MI6, to do exactly what they need.
So D2 is basically putting those skill sets in together on a leadership platform with, you said up to 10, and really how they're targeting, their clients. And it's a different approach rather than internal. It's more external as far as bringing, how they're assessing, clients or prospects or that type of thing moving forward. Is that accurate? Or
yeah, because the biggest thing that people sometimes will do is they say, hey, we need to really partner with these people, and you kind of use your anecdotes, your own subjective experiences, and you kind of do a little wing and a prayer. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But a lot of times, if we really have someone we really, really, really need on board, we don't have time to mess around, and we only have one shot, and we got to make that shot we make the best one we got, because we might not get another one. And that's what we do, because it was the same in our lives, and we have a lot of experience doing that. And when you take a deep dive behavioral experience with it, and techniques and tools to understand, not just from our background and experience, but also the science that backs it up, that's what we're doing. It's like always thinking in terms of, so for 3 days, you're thinking in terms of them. So why should they want to? Why should someone want to partner with you? And then we do the deep dive, understanding them, the person you want on board. What's their psychology? What's their background? What's that life arc? What are their critical needs, dreams, and aspirations, pain points, friction points? And then what are you going to do to be a resource for those things, so they can then feel safe with you to move forward? So those are the things we focus on during that time period together.
And that's and that's the trusted relationship. That's where they come in. So you're building that foundation.
Yep, and they walk away having some practice because we do field exercises with them with no role players. This is, hey, go out. We're going to give you some skills today. Going to go out during lunch, practice doing this. Come back, we'll debrief it. We'll always do what a little praise and polish. Hey, here's what went really right. Here's something that you need a few more reps in to get a little more experience and kind of identify some blind spots people may or may not have had.
Mm-hmm.
So that by the end of 3 days, you've identified not just skills, tools, and techniques you can use with anyone and make your own leadership style at work and with partners better, but also a very targeted package if that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating because you run into a lot of executive leadership programs. Yours is completely different because it's a different approach, and you have, your skill set, MI6, on the behavioral analysis side on the FBI. So it's a different approach. I like it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
Too. It's just a lot of fun, and it just makes the fun thing about it is we do it for business, we do it for making our business more profitable and getting people on board that we need, and it's both internal and external to your business. But I'm telling you, at the end of the day, all these skills are universal, and so it actually make you a better parent, make you a better spouse, it'll make you better with your friends, it just makes you a better human being because you understand what everyone in every single relationship is looking for. They're looking to be seen, they're looking to be heard, and looking to be valued.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you demonstrate that consecutively as well as consistently with others?
How many 3-day programs do you do annually? I know you just started it last year, but 4 of them a year?
Yeah, so we limit everything to do 1 a quarter, and
Yep.
so it's one of those things that it's a first come first serve, and then we work with dates because we come on site or we can do a centralized location, whatever is best for you all. But it's we're very restrictive with it because it takes a lot of effort to do these things,
Oh, sure.
and also we got to coordinate a lot of schedules, and so best way for it to do this with us and is to schedule it way ahead of time and make it convenient for everyone, as well as we got to pick a appropriate location, venue, and that whole thing.
And then what is your target, I would say client as far as employee size and vertical?
So we'll do whatever the client's looking for, where they think their pain points are at. We tend to want to stick with the high executives because once you get people at the top on board, they can then
Mm-hmm.
filter that down. Because part of this, we want to give people and that executive staff the ability to train the trainer about this as well. Because if you can if you can highlight and give some strengths and tools to the executive team, that can filter down a lot easier than trying to hit the baseline at the bottom. But hell, if that's what a client wants, that's what we'll do. But typically we're going for that smaller executive team at the top.
Got it. So you do that 4 times a year. Tell us, moving away from D2, tell us how you're doing the true crime podcast and how that's evolved into your because you're everywhere, and our audience will start to Google you, and we'll help help them buy the books. But the true crime podcasts are fascinating.
It's a fascinating thing, Jason. It's funny. I was telling my wife yesterday, if you put on my bingo life card that I'd be the co-host of a true crime podcast 3 or 4 years ago, I would have said you're nuts. But so here's how this all manufactured over the years. And I never would have thought it was congruent, but it's actually extremely congruent with what I've done with my entire career. So we'll start with what I did my entire career. My entire career inside the FBI, as well as leadership in the Marine Corps, was trying to understand what makes people do what they do.
Sure.
Because if you're trying to recruit a confidential human source, a spy, an intelligence officer, or even your bosses so they can give you a yes for the operation you want to do, you have to understand what motivates them to take the actions you want them to take. And so it comes down to what inspires people to feel safe with you. That goes down to, of course, human behavior. Then what happened was I retired from the FBI in 2018, and I'd been called numerous times because I published books and stuff from news organizations to do commentary on crime matters and true crime. And I've always turned it down, as I said, I don't do true crime. But what happened was the Kohberger case, the Brian Kohberger case, the Idaho murders happened, and I got called by a news organization on cable news and said, hey, can you do a behavioral assessment of human behavior for this Kohberger case? I said, oh, yeah, I do nonverbals, I do human behavior. And so I did. And then I started getting more calls on this, and I found that it is so much easier assessing criminals than spies, because spies, if you're working with intelligence officers, these are the highest trained individuals in the world. They're the highest educated, the very healthy relationships they have. They're very, very healthy, normal human beings that just happen to be working for an adversary. And so working at that challenge can be challenging because they're good, healthy human beings. Well, working criminals is easy as hell because they're all broken people, and so broken people are a lot more easily predictable of their behavior, and then there's a lot more research on them as well. And so I found that a lot more fascinating and a lot of fun to assess pure nut jobs, really. And so I just got into taking that same skill set of understanding the motivations of human beings when it comes to recruiting to what's the understanding the motivations of human beings to do heinous things against other human beings. It's not a far leap, believe it or not. And so I got into doing it very frequently. And then around the same time, I was a contributor for the Hidden Killers podcast with Tony Bruschi, and then just transitioned recently into being a co-host for that. And so, yeah, we've been doing this for quite a while. I've been doing that podcast about 3-4 years now. It's covered a lot of cases. I cover a lot of cases. And I got to tell you, if I could have stayed in the Bureau another 3 or 4 years, I probably wouldn't transition to this because it is fascinating, but it's all relatable too, because it's just all understanding the motivations of human beings.
And its intent and trying to go ahead and see, because I've heard your podcasts and they're fascinating. The latest one was on Nancy Guthrie,
Yeah,
on that, and you cover that extensively. And it's I think one of the things you said, one was intent, and then basically trying to go ahead and say, okay, what's plausible, what's not, or or inconclusive or conclusive. And I think social media, and we talked about this offline, just takes it into a whole new world. I mean, it's just it's so that's why, and then it keeps you busy because you're like, okay, well, wait a minute, this is what the facts are. This is what we have to look at it at 10, and you break it down in a systematic way. Whereas social media just basically says, okay, it's TMZ, and this is what they're doing.
People. Yeah, because people love emotional responses to things.
Sure,
and
of course.
One of the fun things I love to do in this, and this is where it does relate to actually, things like I do with D2 and CEOs trying to recruit individuals or sources or anything. It's like understanding, does this make sense? And so when it came to the Nancy Guthrie case that I'm still working, I cover so extensively, is I love entertaining weird outline conjecture, theories, conspiracy theories. I'll say, hey, let's do it. Let's go down this road and see if it makes sense. Because what I do is like, first, let's look at research. There's so much research on what's been done in the past. Past is prologue for a lot of things. And so I can see whether this is going to fit a pattern or not a pattern of typical human behavior or typical criminal enterprises at work. And if generally it either falls way outside or it falls within that pattern. If it falls way outside, let's entertain it. Because then the keyword you use that I use all the time now, it came back to John Douglas, one of the first FBI profilers. He wrote a book about motive, and he said it's not even about motive. It's like, what was the intent? Because once you understand intent, you start looking at the behaviors. Do the behaviors fall in line with the intent? And so if the intent of the CEO is to recruit someone or to get someone on board, if their intent is to do that, now you have to look at their intent and then see the behaviors that we're doing line up with that intent or not line up with that intent. Same thing with Nancy Guthrie. So if you look at the case of her going missing, there was a break-in that we saw. And what's the intent of break-ins? To make a profit. And so we can go down the road that she was abducted for profit, or that they're going to do, according to the research, that was most likely a home invasion for profit. The key motive there is for profit. And so everyone that keeps coming back with it was a cartels, all these things. All right, let's play that out. How can that be profitable or not profitable? And then if they make it, and remember, in the world of business, you want to make it easy for people to give you their money. They never did that. And then people say, oh, this guy he's a mastermind because you haven't caught him yet. Well, not really, because if his intent was to make money and get profit, he completely failed. So everything went completely sideways on that case for the individual because he didn't make money, he didn't steal anything, and there you go. It's just a sad case, but that's what we do. We break it down. You look at intent, you look at behaviors that are either backing or not backing intent. You overlay it with research, you kind of look at laws of probability, and you can kind of really map out what most likely happened.
In addition, you're you're a big statistics guy too. So you look at the stats and
I
you
look at a lot of
say,
stats.
yeah, I know and a lot of those statistics basically point it to one way. And then
Hmm.
and then social media takes it another way, which is fascinating. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
and I'll throw one more thing on that too,
yeah,
because
yeah,
now
yeah,
here
sure.
it's just all these little fun rabbit holes you wind up going down. So a lot of people I've been covering also the sheriff in this, Sheriff Nanos of
Right,
Pena County.
right.
So everyone's saying, oh, he's horrible, he's doing a horrible job and all these things. I said, all right, let's look at the stats. Here's the stats on that. So his misstatements, because everyone says he's all made all these misstatements. Well, did you know that he actually, when it comes to averaging out nationally, televised cases like this, he actually falls right in the average for every single leader of any law enforcement organization for misstatements. He is right in the average, so he's not an outlier. The other thing, so the crime labs, it's sent into his crime lab, for the DNA processing compared to Quantico, still falls within the average. He falls in completely within the averages of every single thing. But there's one thing that I uncovered over the weekend that he hasn't even highlighted that falls way outside the average. And this is why my conjecture is he has a lot of confidence in what he's doing, is that he his clearance rate, in other words, the number of cases that he solved in 2024, his department solved, he had 12 homicides and he solved 12 out of 12 homicides. He had a 100% clearance rate of homicides in his department, and that is for a suburban large department.
Hmm.
That is way above the national average. National average for clearance rates for homicides or missing people is around 50 to 60% of the best departments. He is way above average, and his department has been way above average for the last, since he's been sheriff. He's not the best in the country, but he's in the top 3 to 5% of the entire country for clearance rates, and he's got 50 years of experience doing this. He's got a lot of people that have actually said internally that he's a horrible leader, and he's got the chief, the president of the sheriff's union or the police union saying he's done X, Y, and Z. That's actually very common. That all these things. So in other words, he's fallen well within averages of all these things, but above average has been his clearance rate for homicides. So to say that he is an outlier, that he's a horrible sheriff and he's doing all these things wrong, nope. Now, does that mean our systems need to be held more accountable to be above average? Yes. But when it comes to him, and this is not a defender of him or not a defender of him, like you
Yeah,
said,
you're
I'm a
just
stats
going
guy.
over the stats.
Here's the research, man. So then you apply
Interesting.
that to the things we're doing with human behavior, and yeah, people become extremely predictable.
Interesting. As we close this, because we can talk about this
Yeah, I know. I'm so
for
sorry going all
hours.
these rabbit holes.
We have the Middle East conflict right now.
Mm.
DHS and the FBI has warned everybody for sleeper cells that are in that regime per se to come into the United States. What are a couple takeaways that you can give to our audience as far as what to look for, behaviors, so forth and so on? Because that was a big question that a lot of our listeners and our community had.
Yeah. Yeah, common thing that you hear people say, especially right now with the heightened situation in our security around the world, is they say, be diligent. And I've done this on TV numerous times before, but they don't tell you how to be diligent. What's that
Right.
mean? So
Right.
here's exactly what I want everyone to do a little bit more of every day. If you just do, like James Clear talks about in Atomic Habits, if you just do one more thing and cascade that over a period of time, you become more diligent. Here's what it is. When you walk outside your house, take an extra 5 seconds, clear your mind, and just be present and see what everything looks like. Take it all in, free of an agenda, then go about your day. Then when you come home, take that same 5 seconds and absorb everything around you. What stands out? What looks different? When you go to your normal place of business, take in what looks normal, because here's what you're doing. Here's what diligence looks like. We all have those moments in life when things feel a little off. You feel someone makes you feel a little creepy or something seems a little different.
Mm-hmm.
What you're doing is, as a human being, is you are picking up on an incongruence of what your brain expects in that moment. Don't blow by it. Take a second, absorb it, and ask yourself, when you have that feeling that something's a little different, something's a little off, this person's a little different, the situation I'm in feels a little creepy, seems a little strange. Take a second, ask yourself this simple question: what looks different? when you ask a what question, it forces your brain to kind of lock in on not an emotion, but a thing. And when you lock in on a thing, you might be able to identify something that looks different in your environment. That's what you report. That's what you take diligence of, because that is actually what's giving your brain that creepy feeling that, because our ancient, genetically, biologically evolved brain picks up on these things because it sees it as a potential threat to our safety. Right. So that's what diligence is, looking at that baseline of our lives, identifying what stands out, and then that's where that see something, say something comes in. That's when you report. So that's what diligence is. When something feels different in the environment, assess what it is and then report it.
Interesting. This past weekend, we don't know if it was terrorism or not in Austin, Texas. And, that basically moved the needle as far as awareness. So we appreciate those tips. Any closing things on any projects that you're doing before we adjourn?
No, just pick up the recent book. It's a quick, easy read, and it's that's about it. Tune into if you're interested in true crime at all. Listen in to me and Tony Bruschi doing Hidden Killers every day, and you'll hear more. As they say, I am the non-inflammatory, boring guy that kind of hits you with all the, hey, here's what's going on behind the scenes. Here's how things. Here's how to keep calm in chaos, basically, because that's what all comes down to. Because when we keep a calm brain, we can actually work through any challenge and problem we have through great innovation, through great open, healthy alliances.
Well, you guys complement each other, and for our audience, tune into that podcast on true crime. Robin, a pleasure as always, and hope to see you soon.
You betcha, Jason. Thanks very much for having me on.
Thanks. Take care.